They start. Cut it out. 5 stars. 6 stars. A million bajillion stars. If I had an imp, I would name it Cheesy Michael. And I would sing it the little Cheesy Michael song. Hi YouTube! My name is Michaela, or Michaela Sage, and welcome to my second ever YouTube video. This is my spring reading recap where I will be covering all of the books that I read in March, April, and May of this year. I've got 9 of them, so in order to keep my thoughts precise, because I could be here all day, I have the gift of gab, made my thoughts into a Google Doc, and I've got an overview of the book, what I liked about it and what I didn't like about it, in order to kind of keep it shorter. This is a warning, there will be spoilers. Obviously, I'm talking about books I read and what I liked about them, so if you're not a big spoiler fan, sorry. Maybe the next video will be for you. But with that, we can go ahead and get started. First book is Stardust by Neil Gaiman. Don't you love when they make the movie poster the cover for the book? Thanks for that, guys. This one I didn't have much of a choice for which version I got because I got it at a used bookstore. The bookstore near me actually had a sale like the weekend after my birthday. So my boyfriend took me and he got me all the books I wanted. So 2 of these will be from that sale. So thank you to my boyfriend for like basically sponsoring this video. Shout out. Stardust is a fantasy book that stars a boy called Tristan. If you watched my Booktube newbie tag, you know how I feel about fantasy books and their names. Tristan is a very unfortunate name to have to read a bunch of times, but he lives in the town of Wall, which is like the last part of civilization before you go into the magic fairy realm. He's in love with a girl named Victoria, who everyone in the town is in love with. She's like the most beautiful girl you've ever seen. And one night, while professing his love to her, they see a shooting star fall, and Victoria says, "If you bring me back the shooting star, I will give you anything you want. I'll do anything you want." So Tristan sets out on this adventure to find the star so that Victoria will marry him. But what Tristan is not expecting is that the star is not just a piece of rock or metal, it is a lady named Yvain, which is a much cooler name. I really like that one. And he's not the only person looking for her. So this story also follows a witch who wants to find the star and cut out her heart in order to make like a youth potion to stay young forever and more powerful. And there's also some princes who need to find the star because the reason why she fell out of the sky in the first place is because their king, their father, was on his deathbed and they hadn't decided which of the sons was going to be the next ruler of their kingdom. So he takes the family jewels, he tossed it into the sky, which knocked the star out of the sky and down to earth, and now she is in possession of these family jewels. So whoever finds her first and gets the jewels gets to be the ruler of their kingdom. What I really liked about this book, I especially liked the prince storyline, especially because there was ghosts, which I really like ghosts, but the brothers had been killing themselves for years to try and find out who the next ruler was going to be. So the ghost brothers are following them and watching them this whole book, and I really do appreciate that. I thought it was a cool little detail. And I also just like a lot of the side characters you get. So there's one that's described as like a hairy little man. He's not in the movie. I was really hoping he would be because there's no other descriptors you get of him, but he's a gentleman and he's really nice and he helps out Tristan. And so I did really appreciate the hairy little man. And there's also a tree who is described as being a cute tree. And she has a cute voice. And I really like that. And she was like a cute little side character. So very whimsical in this book. Lots of magic. The parts that I did not enjoy, I did not really like the ending. So after Tristan comes back with the star, this journey made him realize things about himself and that he doesn't even really want to marry Victoria anymore. And also, hey, it's wrong to want to force someone to marry you. And so he sets her free and then she goes to marry the person that she actually wants to. But I liked that she was let go. What I don't like, and I was like, oh, there's not going to be romance. It's like the main plot of this book. Wrong. Because as soon as Tristan goes back to Yvain to say, I'm not marrying Victoria, they start. Cut it out. Why can't we have a book that's just like a fun fantasy book? Why did you have to put them in a relationship in the very end? It made no sense. It made no sense whatsoever. So I felt that felt forced. And there was another part of the book that felt rushed. They had like a month left on their journey, and the next month is just described in like 2 paragraphs. And it's like, they did this, and they fought goblins, and they went to this place, and they saw this person, and now they're back here, and their journey's almost over. Why couldn't you just add 100 extra pages of that journey? I would have been, like, more than happy to read 100 more pages of this book. Yeah, I didn't really appreciate that time skip, and I didn't like the forced relationship between Tristan and Yvain when there was, like, nothing leading up to that. For majority of the book, she hates him for capturing her, so. But overall, it was a really enjoyable read. I would give it 3.75 out of 5 stars. I would definitely recommend this to someone else. Next, I read Game Changer and Heated Rivalry, so I'll talk about them in order. Game Changer is about two dudes named Kip and Scott. Kip is a smoothie barista, is that what you call them? And he's also like he got a history degree, so he's a historian. And Scott is a professional hockey player who is deeply in the closet. They meet in the smoothie shop, and they quickly realize they have like an undeniable attraction to each other, undeniable connection, but obviously Scott is in the closet and he is not ready to come out to everyone because there are no openly gay professional hockey players, so that would be like a big deal. So Kip and Scott start having this secret relationship. No one wants to be kept a secret, so it's a little bit of a struggle for Kip especially, but it all works out in the end. Obviously, if you've seen the show or read these books, you know there's a happy ending. So I do really appreciate how these books handle these topics, because a lot of books that have like gay or queer stories can have like hate in them, but so far in these two that I've read, everyone's really supportive when the characters come out, and like Scott won an award for like Player of the Year or something after he came out, and so I really like that. I think it puts a positive spin on like gay stories that you don't normally see, and I think it's really important to like make this safe space for people, because like there's no openly gay hockey players. I didn't really like the whole plot line where Kip refused to accept like money and assistance from Scott, because if I had a really rich hockey boyfriend, I would let him pay for my college. Like, what? If he's offering, dude, he has more money than he knows what to do with. Share with the class. Overall, it was really cute. I would probably give this like a 3.5 out of 5 stars. And then I really liked Heated Rivalry. It follows Shane, who is a Canadian hockey player, and Ilya, who is a Russian hockey player, and they are both entering the professional hockey scene at the same time. Because they're both awesome players, they are pitted as rivals against each other. However, the public doesn't know is that the whole time they've had this rivalry, they've been exploring each other's bodies. What makes this one unique is that it doesn't start out with a romantic connection like Scott and Kip's did. It starts out purely physical, and then as the book goes on, over the course of years, the two have to learn how to coexist and be in a relationship together. Shane, because this is his first relationship with a man, and Ilya, because I think this is his first like intimate relationship where he's been like emotionally open and vulnerable. So I did really like this. I love a slow burn romance, and just like the angst and the yearning and like the wanting to confess your love to someone but not knowing if they feel the same way, and then like the relief that you get when it finally happens was amazing. It was so worth it. I have the next one, The Long Game, to read soon, maybe this summer, I don't know, but I'm excited for the next season of the show to come out. I would give Heated Rivalry 4 out of 5 stars. I'm not gonna give it a 5 because I'm not really like a straight romance person. I'm also not a big spice fan, and obviously these books have a lot of spice in them. I think I probably read all of the scenes for the first like half of each when they're like getting to know each other and it's like building that connection, but then after that I kind of just thumbed through them and didn't read them in as much detail because it's just not like my favorite thing to read in books. But I think in these it works. I'm excited to see what The Long Game will bring. Okay, next book, Lessons in Chemistry. I read this book completely by accident, kind of. My dad's Amazon package got mixed up with someone else's, and this was delivered to our house instead of whatever he ordered, so it's mine now. Thank you, person who got me a full hardcover book. So Lesson in Chemistry is about a chemist named Elizabeth Zott, and she is brilliant, but she lives in the 1960s, which it was not easy to be a woman in the 1960s. It's not easy to be a woman right now, but she was facing a lot of struggles at her job because they were not respecting her for being a woman. However, at her job, she meets a man named Calvin, who is as socially inept as she is. They are two little weirdos, and they end up falling in love with each other, and it's beautiful. And their relationship, as unconventional as they are, they end up moving in together. They are being physically intimate while not being married, which is very much a no-no back then. But Calvin unfortunately does die in kind of a freak accident, leaving Elizabeth, 1, grieving, and 2, pregnant. She also, when she's pregnant, loses her job as a chemist because she's an unmarried mother. That shouldn't be legal. But then we flash forward to a couple of years later where she is offered a job as a TV chef because this TV producer his daughter is in school with her daughter, and he tries her food one time and is like, this is really good, and she's beautiful, obviously. And so women in STEM were beautiful. It does not go how the producers want it to. They want it to be like a cute little show for wives where you make a cocktail for your husband and talk about how much you love your kids. Elizabeth's not doing that. She gets on there and she pushes the status quo like she does throughout her day-to-day life. And not only is she showing these women that they are smart and they should be respected and they are powerful, she is also, learning lessons throughout her own life and how to be a good mother. I did really enjoy this book. I think Elizabeth is such a strong main character. She never backs down on her values, and even if something is like a bad choice, like her show could get canceled, she's still going to be honest and truthful to herself and act how she wants to. So I did really appreciate that. And it's also a very funny book, specifically the scene where she is low-key threatening her neighbor's husband that she's going to poison him, and she makes a dish that could potentially have poisonous mushrooms in it. That scene was really funny, and that's one that sticks out in my brain. There is nothing that I can complain about with this book. I have no complaints. So overall, I'm going to give it a 5 stars. I love this book. I really enjoyed it. It was a really enjoyable read. Next. Ecology of a Cracker Childhood. I already talked a little bit about this one in my Booktube newbie tag because I would consider this one of my favorite books ever. I just read it this past semester for school, and it is autobiographical nonfiction about Janisse Ray's childhood and how she grew up in Middle South Georgia. Well, I do not live in Middle South Georgia. I live in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains. I'm up in the north. My grandparents live pretty close to where she lives, my granny and my papa, and so I have a lot of similar experiences that she did growing up in that area. And there's a lot of sentiments that are shared by her family and her grandparents that my grandparents taught me growing up, and so it was just really awesome reading this book and getting to relate to that. I think one thing that I really remember is her discussing her religious views, which if you grew up in the South, you know how those can be. But there was one anecdote she shared about her grandparents telling her that God promised he wouldn't flood the earth again. That's why we got the rainbow. However, next time it'll be with fire. And guess what my granny told me when I was 5 years old? Same exact thing. So I've never read that before. And she also went to North Georgia for college. And she went to a school that I used to go to before I transferred to my current college. So the biology building she was in, I've been in that exact biology building. We probably sat in the same classrooms. So I feel very connected to this book. It is just, I don't know, it was incredible reading it. It also discusses her family's mental health history, or as they call it, just getting sick. And her father is committed into a psych ward several times, specifically Central State, which is the huge mental institution in Milledgeville, which is where I used to live when I was 1 to 4 years old. I lived in Milledgeville, so I'm very familiar with Central State. It is no longer open. Very unethical place if you look into the history of it. It's pretty insane. I have a book over on my shelf about the history, and they would do things like take patients who they deemed were cured and turn them into nurses and staff because they did not have enough staff for the amount of people they took in. And that obviously was extremely unethical and caused a lot of malpractice. So, I don't know, the fact that her father was there is I don't know, that's terrifying to me, and there's not a lot of details about what his life was like when he was at Central State, but you do get more details about her mom and how she managed as a single mom with multiple children, and like how she would handle when her father was having like episodes and when his mental health was getting really bad again, as well as talking about her family history. It also talks about the ecology of the area, obviously ecology in the title, but it's the longleaf pine ecosystem, which is a fastly degrading ecosystem because they're not protecting it very well, and the animals in it are at risk of going endangered. So not only are you connecting with her southern heritage, you're also making connections to the natural resources and learning to care about them and protect them. I think the ecological story in this that impacted me the most was the one about the gopher tortoise, because gopher tortoises, fun fact, if you're from Georgia, they are our state reptile because they are a keystone species. They are very important for the survival of all of the other animals that live in their region. They dig these huge burrows under the ground that a bunch of other animals hide in, and they can use them for shade if there's like a heat spike or if there's fire, which is necessary for the longleaf pine ecosystem to live. In the story, she talks about a man who had taken one and had like painted him gold to keep him as a silly little pet. And this kind of cruelty reminds me of stuff that I would see at my previous job where we had a lot of animals that were non-releasable. So in the state of Georgia, it is illegal to keep a native animal as like a pet. So all of our animals were non-releasable animals that had been injured in some way or another, couldn't live on their own. We had a gopher tortoise that, I mean, older than I am, I think he's in his 30s, but someone had taken like a trophy and like super glued it to his back, and he was the prize at like a state fair contest for something, and they were just giving him out with a trophy glued to his back. And so someone took him and stole him and turned him into people that could treat him properly, and then eventually he ended up with us, but he still had a mark on his shell from where the trophy was super glued to him. So the inhumane treatment of animals like that, like, I think touching on that in the book, oh my goodness, I think touching on that in the book is a good way to make people care about wildlife, because it makes them feel empathetic towards the animals and makes them want to protect and care about them more. Also, just like a fun fact, the longleaf pine ecosystem has my favorite snake ever. It is the eastern indigo snake. They're beautiful, but they're also, I think they're threatened. They're not endangered, but they're threatened right now because people kill them, because they're our biggest snake in Georgia. I think they get like 8-9 feet long. They're not venomous, but people see them and get scared and then like kill them. And so because of that, their numbers are very small. But we gotta do better, guys. We gotta do better, and Janisse Ray is letting us know how we can do better in her book. Go read it. 5 stars. 6 stars. A million bajillion stars for Ecology of a Cracker Childhood. I'm gonna change my tune a little bit because this is a book that I didn't even finish. The Bees. I unfortunately had to DNF this one. It is about a bee named Flora 717. We just call her Flora as you read the book. And she is born in a beehive deformed. And typically you're supposed to kill all of the abnormalities. They don't like those in the hive. However, an elder bee, a higher up bee with more authority, decides to spare her and give her like a different job. She's supposed to be like sanitation, but they give her a different job. And she tries that out, and apparently later in the book she like breaks a law, and then I think they like are trying to kill her again. I don't know, I didn't make it that far. The style of this book is not a book that resonates with me, and it was really hard for me to get into it. And the religion in the hive is like Christianity, but instead of being based around like God and Jesus, it's based around the queen. And so they have prayers that they do in the book that are just Christian prayers, but with some of the words changed to like fit more into bees. And I don't know, it isn't my thing. And they talk a lot about like the smells, and they're like communicating with smells, and they like touch their little antenna together and they communicate that way. And I just had a hard time, like suspension of disbelief, I guess, and just like accepting what was happening. So the writing in this book is not a style that is easy for me to read. So I'm not giving this a star rating because I didn't read it, but I don't know, maybe you'd really like this. The reason why I have it is because my mom really liked it, and so she bought a copy, but might be for you, so try it out if it sounds interesting. Next, another nonfiction book. Witchfinders. This is another one that I got on my birthday. This book is not what I thought it was going to be. So it's about the largest witch hunt ever in England, led by two witchfinders named Matthew Hawkins and John Stearn, and they killed a lot of women. So I was really intrigued by the idea of like witch hunting, and I especially was intrigued by like why were these women being accused of witchcraft, like what was happening. And I thought it would be a little more, not adventurous, but I guess like have a little bit more fluff in it. But this book, it reads like a textbook. It's very straight to the point, lots of sources, which amazing job. They did a great job researching. They know like everything about the topic. But I think I was just expecting something a little more exciting. So I didn't really enjoy that. So the one thing that I did really enjoy was a lot of the women had imps or like familiars, and they give them names, and one of them was named Vinegar Tom, and I really liked that. There was one that was like Sack of Sugar. A lot of them were just named after themselves. Like if my name was Mary, I'd have an imp named Mary. There's a picture in here too. Wait, let me find it. So there's the picture of the woman and all of her imps. She's the first witch they find in the book, but they're named Sack and Sugar, Vinegar Tom, Grizzle Greedy Gut, Holt. Yeah. If I had an imp, I would name it Cheesy Michael, and I would sing it the little Cheesy Michael song. Things that I disliked about this book, it's quite sad. You know, like obviously I was expecting it to be sad, but I was also expecting there to be like more like kind of valid-ish reasons for why these women were being accused. And every single time it was just like a widow who had turned to begging because she had no source of income after her husband died. And then people were like, yeah, I refused to give her bread, and then I got sick, and so I think she cursed me. No, she's just poor, and you just got sick. And that was that over and over and over again with like every single one, same exact story. So after a while, it wasn't like, it's not a fun read. Like it's kind of interesting, but even then, like it's very repetitive. Same story every single time. Woman, someone accuses her, they're like, okay, we believe you, and then she goes to jail. And they had to get confessions out of these women to prove they were witches, and they would keep them awake for days at a time, or like make them go run around the town until they were exhausted and they gave a false confession. And it even says in here like a lot of the confessions changed depending on who like you asked. If they were told to repeat their story, it would change because they couldn't even remember what they were saying. You were exhausting them to the point of having a false confession. Or some of the people did confess because they thought they had done it, because back during this time, one of the beliefs about witches was that like you didn't have to be a witch on purpose. It could have been completely accidental. Like if I'm having unpure thoughts about hating one of my neighbors and God hears my unpure thoughts, he will give the devil permission to go kill them so that it raises the alarm that someone is having unpure thoughts, and then I can be caught and punished. So a lot of the women felt like they were genuinely guilty for something because they didn't like somebody and then something bad happened to them and they were like, my thoughts caused this because I was having not nice thoughts about them. No, you're allowed to not like people. You just don't wash your hands and everyone's eating rotten food. Like, this has nothing to do with you. And so yeah, it was pretty sad reading after a while. And there was a lot, like the first 100 pages aren't even about the witch hunt. It's just about the historical and political context that led up until that point. And then I think the final like 100 to 70 pages aren't about the witch hunts either. It's about the aftermath. So yeah, overall I didn't really enjoy it. It was interesting at parts, but then it got really repetitive. So I'm gonna give it like a 1.5 stars. Yeah. My first ever book of the month, Yesteryear. So Yesteryear is about a tradwife influencer named Natalie who has millions of followers on Instagram. However, the public and her followers don't see the reality of the situation, which is her farm is funded by her father-in-law, her husband has soft hands and can't farm, her children, she doesn't even have an emotional connection with them. She shouldn't have been a mother in the first place, first of all. No maternal instinct. She has nannies that are raising them. Her husband is homeschooling them. They don't even know what the ocean is. They're being so failed educationally. She has a producer who's helping her film all of her content. And to make things worse, that producer has a secret about Natalie and her husband that could tear down their whole business and their whole image they've created. So lots going on. Just starting this book, it's fully loaded with content. However, something even more shocking happens. One day Natalie wakes up and she's in the 1800s. And she's in her house, but like all of the modern appliances are gone. It looks way more rustic. Her husband is there, but he's old and he's mean and he can actually farm now. And she has children that look like her, but they're not her children that she remembers having. So she has to figure out, how did she get here? Is it a prank show? Like, is someone teaching her a lesson? Is God teaching her a lesson? Like, what's happening? I liked a lot about this book. It was really interesting. I think there was a lot of explanations for why Natalie was the way that she was. And you really get to like see into her head and understand the circumstances that led her to being like a really neurotic, cold individual. And every other person in her life at some point is trying to push gender norms. They're trying to escape this like super strict religion that they've been in. And every single time she gets the urge to question things, to push against it, it just causes her to revert back into her shell even more. And I think that's really sad for her. But in the end, like, she gets at the worst of everyone, I think, because of like repressing all of her thoughts and just forcing herself to be a happy, traditional Christian wife. So that, I think, is a really good lesson about like listening to your inner self and following what you want to do rather than what you think you should be doing for the sake of appearances. She loves appearances. Big motivator for her. One character that we do visit a couple times in this book is Natalie's college roommate. So she did go to college momentarily, which is where she met her husband, and it just reinforced to her that like the modern world is awful and she wants to go be a little traditional wife. Her roommate, several times, Natalie thinks of her throughout the book and is like, I wonder what, her name is Rena, I wonder what Rena's doing right now. She's probably like, she's graduating right now. Oh, I wonder what Rena's doing now. She's applying for jobs. I wonder what Rena's doing right now. She's going through her first divorce. Like, she's imagining all of these scenarios that Rena is in at the same stage in her life that Natalie is at. And I think this is a way for her to explore what her life would have been like if she did not get married so young and just start having kids and fully committing her life to this man. Where would she be if she had gone out and got a job of her own? But then it's always a negative assumption about Rena, I think, because sometimes it's scarier to go out into the unknown than choosing to settle with the reality that you know, even if you're not happy with it. And I think that is definitely the choice that Natalie made, of wanting something new, but then realizing that it's a lot scarier out in the real world and there's a lot of unknown. And so if she just sucks it up and follows the guidelines for life that were set out before her already, then it'll, at least that's an evil that she knows, as opposed to going out and having to try new things. Things I didn't like, the ending. Obviously, do I think time travel was going to be the answer? No. But I thought it was going to be something a little bit more creative than she lost her mind and she's crazy now. She's crazy and she's taking pills, so her timeline is messed up in her brain. Really? Okay, I guess. Like, it makes sense, but I don't know. It was a little unsatisfying of an ending. Overall, I really liked it, just the ending is a little bit meh, in my opinion. I think it could have been something a little bit more creative than that. But yeah, it was a crazy reveal. I remember when I read it, I was like, so it still shocked me. I didn't see it coming, but just looking back, I don't know, I think I would have been happier with a different resolution. And it ends with her reading her daughter's memoir of like growing up in this household, and it stops after she reads like the introduction to the book. I would have loved to have heard her reaction to it, because she never changes. There is no growth for her whatsoever. She just like commits and commits and commits, keeps digging the hole bigger for herself. And so I think I would have liked to have seen like a little bit of a reaction from her, to see if reading this recount how her daughter grew up from her perspective is the thing that will finally make her like wake up and change. Overall, I'm gonna give it, I keep struggling between a 4 and a 4.5, and so I think I'm gonna give it a 4.25, be very exact with it. But it was a good book, and I think they're making it into a movie with Anne Hathaway, so I would definitely be tuning in for that. Final book, Landlines. This is also a non-fiction book. Didn't know that when I got it. This one I got at a library book sale, and there's just reviews on the back. There's no like book description, so I got it purely based off of the cover. Look at how pretty it is. I like it. This is about the author, Raynor. This is an alias that she goes by. It's not her real name. And her husband, Moth, who their whole life they have been adventurers together. They go backpacking, they go hiking. However, in their older age, her husband has been diagnosed with a degenerative brain disorder, and so he's slowly losing his memory, his control over his body, and he's pretty much given up on life and thinks that he's on his deathbed. And the beginning of this book is really sad, because it's like she doesn't even recognize her husband that she's been with for her whole life. So it is an emotionally packed book. I was terrified while reading this that something bad was going to happen to him. I don't think I could have managed that. I grew such a like connection to these people. I wanted them to succeed. I wanted them to be happy. What they end up doing in this book is a very long walk. They like to call them long walks. They did one when he first got diagnosed, and it helped prolong some of the symptoms, maybe make him a little bit better. And so she believes that if they go on another long walk, maybe it can help him again. But she ends up convincing him, because he's very stubborn, and they do this 200-mile walk, and they complete it, and then they keep walking, and they end up doing like 1,000 miles across Great Britain. Oh my god, that is so impressive. Like, I'm an outdoorsy girl, I love hiking, I don't want to do more than like 3 miles at a time. So the fact that they did this for months, and him like in his condition, and he did improve, which is incredible. So it's a very hopeful story. It's a good read. Like, if you just want something that'll make you feel good, it's incredible. I mean, honestly. And I also think part of the reason why I like this book is because she cares a lot about ecology and natural resources, and so there are parts where she discusses like what they're walking past and what this means, and you know, people's connections to where they're hiking and where they're from. And there's a lot of commentary about the hiking community and people's attitudes towards hiking, because they meet several people that are trying to speed run these long trails they're doing. They're just trying to get through it as fast as possible, maybe break their last time. And they're not fully getting to enjoy and connect with nature as they're hiking, because they're just worried about their numbers. And I think that's really silly. I feel like I hike to connect with nature and relax, and you're making it into a race when it shouldn't be. Like, we should just be enjoying ourselves. So there's commentary on that, and they do meet a lot of people in this book, and it's, I don't know, it's just beautiful little slice of life. It also takes place during the global pandemic of COVID, so things are a little different because of that. And so yeah, it was really interesting. I really liked her thoughts. She's very insightful. Apparently this was the 3rd book she's written, I think, so I might have to go back and read her other ones, because her writing is, this is a writing style that I really like. So yeah, awesome book, hopeful book, very good to finish out my spring reading season with. I'm gonna give it a 4.5 out of 5 stars. All right, those are all of the books that I read this spring. If you've read any of them yourself, please let me know in the comments. Tell me, was your opinion different than mine? Was it similar to mine? And if you haven't read any of them, I recommend it, and then you can come back and share with me what you thought. If you have other books you think I would like based off of these, please let me know. I'm always looking for new things to read. So thank you for watching this YouTube video, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye!